Now we have some very distinguished gentlemen, like I said, and I'll ask them to do two things. The first is to make the presentation so simple that a child can understand. We want simplicity. There's nothing to beat simplicity. And I know that they're capable of that because you've given your time here to listen to them. We have Professor Tarron Khemraj, my very good friend Christopher Rell, and Dr. John Mango. These are household names in Guyana and abroad. And they have volunteered their time to be here today. Give them a big round of applause. So we're going to set the rules. The first, you can't have rules if you do something without rules. So the first rule is that each speaker will get 20 minutes. That will take us to 1 hour. After that, I'm not going to have to tell them the time is up because they're aware of time. A good speaker knows when to stop within the time. And after that, we will open it up for your questions because that is where we'll get most of the benefit of this exercise, your questions and their responses. So now we will begin with Professor Khemraj. Well, let me tell you a little bit about him. He doesn't have a very long CV. In fact, none of them do. They don't want me to read pages and pages, and I don't want to read pages. So Professor Tarron Khemraj is presently Professor of Economics and International Studies at New College of Florida, the Honors College of the State University System of Florida. He is also a columnist for the Starbuck News. You probably tune into that first thing in the morning. Writing the Sunday Business Page. He was an economist at the Bank of Guyana and lectured at the University of Guyana. And he lived in Richmond Hill for about 5 years when he was studying. He studied at the University of Guyana, the University of Manchester in England, and the New School for Social Research in New York. Very distinguished Guyanese, and now he will address us for 20 minutes. Professor Khemraj.
Thank you very much, Dr. Narang. Thank you all for coming. It's always good to leave Sarasota, Florida, and come spend some time here on the Christmas season and in the summer months. So far, since I've been here in the last week, I've had cook-up from Seville, and I did get my kalonji, for those of you who might be following me on Facebook, and I've been having a regular dose of dal and rice and pumpkin and coconut choka. So it's always good to be here. I also like Sarasota. It's a very beautiful place. But I lived here for 6 years, when I was studying in Manhattan. So this has actually become my second home, Richmond Hill, Little Guyana. So my task here today is to talk about the natural resource curse, which is natural because it's a phenomenon that economists have spent a lot of time observing and studying. And so I'll talk a little bit about that and give you my take. I would appreciate a lot of questions from me after because, I have a lot of stuff in my mind and you can only bring it out if you ask me questions. I'll be very happy to address them. So the natural resource curse, but I want to emphasize the political dimensions of this thing, and we'll talk. And what is the natural resource curse? It's a very simple idea, and it goes as follows. We found that countries with large amounts of natural resources, and you're going to want to follow the slide so that we can, countries with large amounts of natural resources tend to underperform economically and socially nations with very little natural resources, okay? And so economists have coined this term, natural resources can have undesirable outcomes on economic development. And what do we mean by economic development? Well, it means several things, but I'll keep it simple. It basically, you can think about the average income of a country. So the United States has an average per capita income, meaning average income of 56,000 US. Singapore, 60,000 US. These are considered advanced developed nations. Guyana has a per capita income or an average income of about 4,000 US. It's a developing country. Or I have written many times in academic papers and so on, it's an underdeveloped nation, and I've given many reasons for that, historical and political reasons. Right? So we have natural resource. So countries with this abundance of resources do not do that well. So I've actually given you some examples. So it turns out that there is only one nation we can point to which has largely developed because of exploiting natural resources, and that's Norway. Right? Yes, there are some countries like Australia and Canada with large amounts of abundant natural resources. As a matter of fact, the United States is very abundant with natural resources. But it would not be fair to say the United States advanced and developed because of natural resources, of exploiting natural resources, right? Nor would we can say the same thing for Canada, which has a large manufacturing sector, diversified financial industry, very sophisticated service-based industries, and so on, right? So Norway is really the only one we can point out, right? That we can say it's developed largely by oil and gas. But of course, we have some mixed stories. And of course, our neighbor Trinidad and Tobago is a classic example of a partial success story. You know, and for those of you who have followed Trinidad, there's a lot of problems here right now, and with crime and violence and so on. And of course, Botswana in Africa has developed and become this middle income status, largely by exploiting diamond, and the Botswana story is a very interesting story, you know. And of course, Kuwait and Qatar. Outside of these, there aren't very good examples of mixed success stories, right? So, of course, we have it turns out we have many examples of below average long-term performers, right? And of course, we don't have to go very far. Guyana is really one of them, because I don't know if you know this, but Guyana gets close to $1 billion a year in export of gold now, and the legal part of the gold export is approximately 750 to 800 million US. That's a lot of money, right? But for a 3.2 billion US economy, right? And of course, you have the part that's smuggled, because you know a lot of people like to throw up these terms that Guyana is a narco state, and a lot of people are getting rich because actually. I'm going to write something like this very soon, but it's highly exaggerated. But a lot of the underground economy is actually gold smuggling. There's good reason to believe this, right? And some other parts, right? I'm not discounting that we have narco problems, but it's nowhere near the smuggling of gold, right? And economists, we talk about natural resources, those which are lootable and those which are non-lootable. It's not easy to loot, but they bring along all the problems. Gold is an example, and diamonds are examples of natural resources which are easy to loot, right? That's why you have a large amount of smuggling, right, of gold every year, right? So, you know, you have the regular story, Guyana. I'm spending a lot of time because we are all from here, and it's a classic example where the natural resource course has already played out. And of course, Nigeria, Venezuela, you know, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course, Equatorial Guinea, and there are others, right? Now, why would we turn? Well, let's look at some countries now without an abundance of natural resources. You know, the classic example is one of my favorite places, Barbados. You know, a high human capital nation, very little developed island, but very highly educated population. So Barbados is a success story. I mean, you might have read stuff about debt and all of that, but don't discount its ability to manage the economy going back to the 60s. No major natural resource, right? Barbados, of course, Mauritius, Singapore, Japan, and all these places do not have a lot of Germany, France, United Kingdom. Okay, so let's talk about the how. I keep telling you that, so we've defined the natural resource first. It means that countries with natural resources tend to underperform. Well, how does this happen? There are various channels through which this can happen. One of the ways is through civil conflict. Natural resources do result in conflict, outright civil war, and other kinds of drawn-out, long-term, low-intensity conflict. Okay, this is one of the ways it happens. Of course, deindustrialization, when you have lots of natural resources, you tend to de-emphasize other sectors like manufacturing and so on. So it results in that deindustrialization. But of course, there's this phenomenon known as the Dutch disease. It's a subset of this natural resource curves. And the Dutch disease goes back to the experience of the Netherlands many years ago in the 60s, where the export of natural gas in particular resulted in strong appreciation of the currency, then the guilder, which then resulted in strong currency. And if you have too strong a currency, it's not good for your exports. So there was this deindustrialization of the Netherlands, right? And so on and so on. So, but from a Guyanese standpoint, because this is what I do research on financial systems, and I'm not so worried about Dutch disease part of it. I think Dutch disease can be managed. There are ways to do it. We're not going to get into that here, but it can be done. I am more worried about the political situation, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about the politics right now. So, before we get to the political aspects, how much money will Guyana get? Well, I've written about this several times, of course. We all know that the contract is not the best contract. I'm not going to say more on this, but we have a panel here that is well qualified to talk about the weaknesses of the contract. But the contract, we will agree, is not the best. It's not the most optimal contract. But I'd like you to know that in spite of that, the potential exists for Guyana to make a lot of money by volume, right? Meaning, when Guyana hits the 250, 300,000, 500,000, 750,000, potentially perhaps 1 million barrels or more, will be a lot of money. Next year, you're not going to get a lot of money. The following year, 300 perhaps million US, right? So how much money could Guyana get? Well, I've actually I did some simulations. I know you can't see this, but it's not. So what I'm going to do, this is the worst case scenario at a price of $35 a barrel. Worst case, next year, if the price is $35 a barrel, well, the government gets 2 or 4 million US. And this has to do with, all my numbers are in US dollars, right? I'm recording the US dollars. So the worst case scenario could be 2 or 4 million if the price falls to 35 US. And if the price, this is producing 120,000 barrels, which is where Exxon and others have said next year, probably they're going to do the following year. And in the best case scenario that I looked at, it can even get better, perhaps 120, but those are probabilistically very low events. But if the best case at $100 a barrel is 583 million next year, right? If the price rate increases to $100. And I don't know how many of you are following the financial news actively, like I do, like the CNBC and the Bloomberg, right? So what I've done is I've simulated some cases where, given the contract, of course, I used the contract numbers, the numbers embedded in the contract, the story 2% royalty, the 75% cap on costs, right? And of course, 50% profit share, right? And so these are the numbers. So next year, within the green band is where I think it's probably going to be between 320 to 379 million if the price goes up to $65 next year on average. Again, these are all average, right? As a matter of fact, if there's any technician here, this should be expected value. All these things have a probability attached to them, right? So the expectation. So let's say somewhere around the 320, 340 range, right? Which is good money, but still not the amount of money next year gold brings in already. But look what happens when we increase the number of barrels, though. right? As you can see in the green range. The potential exists by the time Guyana gets up to 350,000 barrels per day. The country could get $6-point-something billion a year. That's a lot of money for a small population, right? It's a lot of money, right? So the question is, will this money be used in the best possible way to benefit everyone? Or will we see two US dollar Guyanese billionaires resulting in the next decade? Right? Think about it, right? Right? Will we see a situation where the country moves now to where we have gated communities and we can allow to fly out with our private jet to get medical treatment in Miami, and our elites now stop sending their kids to University of Guyana? We live in gated communities, right? We go abroad for medical help, right? We don't normally use the services. I'm describing here is actually is happening in other countries, right? The minute your elites say we're not going to use your public service anymore, it's the end, right? Think about it, right? It's the end. Are we going to go down that road, or we're going to solve the distribution problem and have an equitable? Of course, everybody cannot be equal. Everyone cannot have the same amount of money. We can say averages, but at some point, do we have at least attempt to have an equitable distribution of this resource, right? So my takeaway is, from my calculation, in spite of the bad contract, right, you're going to have some money. You're going to get some money, a lot of money, by 2025, 2026, 2030, right? So I'd be happy to email anyone who wants this, so please feel free to, I'll give you my simulation. But, okay, we can roll it over. So I wanna, in spite of what I've said here, the natural resource curse does not have to be inevitable. Of course, the probability is pretty high, but I just made the point that it's probably already playing out in Guyana through gold and so on, right? And other natural resources, bauxite, diamonds, and so on. It's not inevitable, but highly likely. And the reason why I'm saying it's highly likely is because of the political situation. And let me describe the Guyana political situation. I've written this down in academic papers and so on. Basically, people, according to the Lockhart poll, this is a credible poll done by researchers at the University of Vanderbilt, about 87% of the Guyanese population will vote, not because they really love their party, but because they want to keep the other side out, right? In political science, they call it strategic voting. Strategic voting is when you vote, I don't like these Democrats, but I really don't want to see the Republicans, so let's just go out and vote. That's one way strategic voting plays out, right? Okay? So we can have a situation when that happens. You see, so in addition to that kind of voting, this what I call is corrective voting, not everyone, but a large percent of the population, and the data show that. However, we have, the prize is the executive. The prize is the executive, right? You want to win the presidency. It's important to win the presidency because, as economists will tell you, losing the executive is very costly. It's a costly process. Think about it, right? All those patronage and the deals you can't get, right? Costly, right? We call it rent-seeking in economics, right? So the party that wins gets a lot of the rights, right? This is how the Constitution is set up. The losing party, right, has to find ways to undermine the winner. This has been going on, I mean, the current problem we have in Guyana right now started way back in the, the 50s, and I say go back to immediately after in the 1840s. But, I mean, the post-1992 period, the very first flashpoint started in 1995, right? That's, right? In 1995, Chetty was alive, right? Right? So you have the winner. you cannot cooperate. That's the dilemma we're in, right? So understand where I'm saying if you people vote this way, the price is the executive, and the loser cannot cooperate. Because if the loser cooperate, there are all kinds of consequences, right? Okay, yeah.
Such as consequences such as?
Huh?
Consequences such as?
No, we can't do that right now. Let them finish. Thank you.
Well, it's mainly economic consequences. Think about it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, right? So, it's economic consequences. You're paid, you don't get a job sometimes in the civil service, or you don't get a scholarship. These are the economic consequences. And I'm arguing a lot of the explanation goes back to economics, right? Of course, a mixture between economics and politics. So let's forward. So somebody will want to rebut me and say, if Mr. Ramatar was here, President Rambra, President Man to talk to, if he was here, he would rebut and say, well, we have committees in Parliament. You can go to Parliament. Here's the deal. And these committees came out from the Herdmans and the Card, the constitutional reform that took place in the late 90s, 2000, 2001, 2002. This was an addition to the Constitution that you should go to Parliament and you should chair some committees. I'm going to tell you this right now, as Professor James said in his book, right? No Guyanese politician is truly interested in sub-executive power sharing. Nobody, right? Nobody is interested in sub-executive. No, nobody wants to really be the boss of a committee. We want the executive. That's where the action is. Right? That's I'm just describing.
2 minutes.
I'm not saying that I agree with this, but this is how I see it, right? So if you lose, there's the high probability that this whole thing is marginalization, phenomenon, and so on, go on. I talk about you can ask me about the list system and all of that. So we have the list system, the price is the executive, and you can forward this. And I have solutions. I'm not gonna. I have some suggested solutions. I'm not saying they are the right solution, but here's my rationale for my solution. I am using an analogy. I'm going to 2 minutes and I'm going to wrap up. My solutions. I'm using an analogy from a branch of mathematics known as calculus, right? And in calculus, it helps us to find what is the best point, right? What is the highest point, right? And to get to that point, you must have a necessary condition. And I am saying the necessary condition is that we have to change the Constitution to take into account the strategic ethnic voting, must minimize its harmful effects. That's the necessary condition. We must find a new set of laws. Don't tell me that the two parties don't want to cooperate, right? But if the legal framework is there, they'll have to, right? And we have to find a way so that there is cooperation on big decision making, right? Because the strategy is, if this man do well, if this guy build a mill farm, oh my, they gonna look so good, we gonna look so bad, let me make sure we destabilize the thing, right? Right? That's what, right? So there has to be joint ownership of the projects, right? And you need a legal and constitutional framework to deal with it. I'm saying that that's a necessary condition, and I have a series of what I call sufficient conditions now, right? Even if you don't agree with my recommendations, I am saying if we don't think about the necessary and the sufficient conditions, let's look at some of the sufficient conditions. If you don't think about it in necessary and sufficient conditions, we're going to have another flat constitutional reform process, just like the Herdmans in the Card. Right? Just like the Herdmans in the Card. Right? So, as I said, you can ask me questions, and I'm going to end here.
Very good. Thank you.